My dad owned a restaurant locally, and he had a relationship with the university. He would feed the teams often as pregame meals or some other occasions, and I think that probably started the relationship, but it actually preceded the UNI-Dome.
Just growing up in Waterloo and in the community, Dad immediately recognized UNI as an asset to the Waterloo-Cedar Falls community, and was a college athlete himself and appreciated the dedication and the work that it takes to be a student athlete. And so I think it was very natural for him to support that here in Cedar Falls. I've lived down by Des Moines. I live in Des Moines now. I've never missed football games in the UNI-Dome. It was really kind of cool that these seats that Mom and Dad had gotten for us, that we grew up in those seats, we were able to take over and then host Mom and Dad. You know, we took them to the games, and that was really an honor to be able to do that. So, and going to college here, I'd start over at the student side with my friends, but I always ended up in our family seats. You know, I loved that group. You get to know the people around you. You know, there are just, you see the same people. It's sort of like you have your neighbors in your neighborhood, and then you have your neighbors in the UNI-Dome, and you reconnect once fall comes, and you get to see everybody. So that's pretty cool too.
And when we first came here, this was a cornfield in this area, and then Erickson's built a garage on the corner of 27th and Hudson. And so this was quite a change.
Well, it's awesome. You take a look at this big pillow sitting in the western side of Cedar Falls, and obviously there's been some troubles over the years. It's always fun to talk about the snowstorms and how they had to put the heat up in the dome and try and melt the snow off, and then going out with shotguns, blowing holes in the ceiling to get so it drained so it didn't collapse the whole thing.
I think the first thing we attended in here, we did not have seats. We sat on the cement steps, as we called them.
My earliest memories of the Dome, well, those first seasons, seeing all the students sitting on the concrete and the visiting team sitting on the concrete, and thinking that might not be very comfortable, but it's better than being out in the cold, once the end of the season came.
The UNI-Dome changed UNI athletics. I don't think that anybody would dispute that. It started with football and Stan Sheriff, and it launched into basketball. I remember when we hosted Wisconsin, when Jim Barry first moved the team to Division I, and I specifically remember being really excited about coming to see a big-time basketball game.
Just being here for the basketball game when we played Iowa in 1990, I think it was January of 1990, with the record crowd of 22,000 plus. I remember we walked around the dome for 45 minutes after the game, just taking in the atmosphere of the whole thing. It was very exciting.
Probably my first memory of the Dome was coming up with my grandfather and my dad before there was ever a game in it, just to look at it. It was a spectacle. It was really cutting edge at the time.
Well, the game I don't remember too well, but the Dome was just amazing. You just wondered how little UNI had such a great facility.
I think that we kids were probably in the inaugural summers of sports camp, and I remember having our last day doing competitions down on the turf, and actually the night before that sleeping on the turf. And back then the Dome it was all dome canvas, and it had these underlayments, and they would actually show movies on the ceiling of the Dome during sports camp. So that's one of my really early childhood memories. I also have an early memory of watching Don Briggs parachute down and land on the top of the Dome. That was really cool, and that probably was sports camp. I'm guessing because he was the director of sports camp for several years when we came.
Stan Sheriff came up with the plan, and everybody poo-pooed it. He'd been out to Idaho and saw a fixed dome stadium they had, and the faculty was dead set against it. The activist student body was dead set against it, and finally it started coming together, and they got a plan. They came to having an air-inflated roof.
It was a lot of money for anybody in those days, and how they were going to raise all that money, and you really play football indoors, and what else are you going to use it for? It'll never pay for itself.
And we were just out of college, and I think we committed to $250, $50 a year for 5 years. And that's how the thing was built. You know, you had a few big givers, but it was people giving 200, 300, 500, and pretty soon it equaled 7 million, I guess.
Think of all the things they have here now. Not only the football game, but the craft shows, agriculture shows, all the various big bands and so forth. It's been a facility that's really brought a lot to our area.
The foresight of Stan Sheriff and T. Wayne Davis and some of those people that really pushed for that and get it pushed through, and John Kamerick, I think, was the president of the university at the time, and the support they gave, and they reluctantly got the community to come on board. Could be, well, that's such a folly to have such a, you know, the UNI-Dome, what's indoor football, you know, way ahead of their time.
I would say at least a half a dozen to a dozen of the people around us have had those seats as long as we have.
Moved to Kansas City about 3 years ago because of grandchildren, see the grandchildren and grew up and be part of their lives. But kept my season tickets for football and plan to keep our season tickets for football.
We think the college is great. We've sent our children here, and it's just part of our life. That's all there's to it.
It wasn't 20 years ago that you could hardly find people wearing UNI shirts. Everybody wore Iowa State or Iowa shirts in Cedar Falls. But the university's done a great job of connecting with the community, from administration to the football staff, basketball staff, all the coaches, and then you know, all the players, you know, out reading in the schools and doing things in the community. And it really makes you proud to be a UNI alum and a citizen of the Cedar Valley.
We travel every year or so on the team plane to games, and you never met a bunch of nicer kids. And same thing when you go down on the field. You know, they don't need to talk to some old gray-haired guy, but they talk to us and seem interested when we tell them we only missed 3 games in 40 years. And we ask them about their parents and if their parents are coming to games, and if they don't, then we always make sure we go down and talk to them, and they'll look for us.
Every time that garage door opens, it's exciting all over again.
We always had the joke when I was in school that we were IOU, Iowa's Other University, and we've got to get rid of that attitude because we're big time